Well, I just wanted to first of all just thank the editors of Cultural Anthropology for inviting me here, and also Rodney. And at Rodney's encouragement, I've had the opportunity to explore the website. And I've been really excited to find a lot of pieces that are relevant to my work. So I'm looking forward to future editions of the journal. So with respect to my research, I have some written comments on reading from my computer screen, if it's not too distracting. With respect to my research, while I teach at a law school, my interest had recently taken me in the direction of legal anthropology and within legal academia, the intersection with social sciences and humanities is still tenuous. So that being said, with my work, I've developed a sort of much greater interest in and appreciation of legal anthropology's methodologies and epistemologies. And I have two basic sets of legal issues which I work on. One set relating to the legal regulation of sexuality, and the other set relating to the legal regulation of religion. And I've always thought that it was with the latter set of questions concerning law and religion that my work had taken a more anthropological turn. And for this reason, I was a little bit uncertain about how to address today's theme, beyond marriage, thematizing gender and sexuality in an anthropological spirit. That being said, my work in law and sexuality has in general been critical from a queer perspective of the ways in which contemporary gay and lesbian rights advocates have chosen to structure their arguments about both the desirability and constitutional necessity of same-sex marriage rights. But I've always thought of that work as more doctrinal and not so much ethnographic. But after receiving this invitation and with further reflection, I guess I've come to realize that my critique of gay and lesbian activists' prioritization and necessitization of same-sex marriage is the consequence of sort of a deeper, previously unreflected upon unease of mine. And this unease, in short, is that the arguments which gay and lesbian activists are advancing in courts in the public sphere about gay and lesbian persons and identities, I think are far more complicated demographically, dialogically, and etymologically than these activists and their supporters are acknowledging. And so one of the themes that I was asked to address today is how journals like Cultural Anthropology can draw a larger audience within legal academic circles. And I'd like to address that theme by discussing some of the hurdles which I believe queer skeptics like myself of liberal, in the Rawlsian sense, LGBT rights have in getting a toehold in the debate over the legal regulation of same-sex intimacies. And I believe that the queer critique here, the queer legal critique here, is one which is anthropological in spirit, and that anthropologizing the legal discussions might lend some needed complexity to what has been a reductive and unsuccessful, I might add, legal strategy concerning the dignity of gay, lesbian, and queer people. In short, I believe that the queer legal critique of the same-sex marriage agenda is crucially dependent upon anthropology. So what are the unanthropological arguments that, much to queer chagrin, gay and lesbian activists are using in the same-sex marriage debates? One notable example of these arguments are those which have been made in the state of California in recent same-sex marriage litigation there. And as many of you probably know, in the spring of 2008, the California Supreme Court, in a 4-3 decision, handed down a groundbreaking decision concerning same-sex marriage in that state. And in this California case, the court was asked to decide the constitutionality, the California constitutionality, of California's relationship recognition scheme, which was actually somewhat unique in these debates. And under this California relationship recognition scheme, marriage was reserved for opposite sex couples, while same-sex couples had access to a parallel domestic partnership regime. Now, this bifurcation between marriage and domestic partnership can be found in a number of states, or marriage and civil unions, or there's some other terminology circulating out there. But California's regime of separate laws for different sexual orientations was unusual in that it afforded domestic partners, and this is the Supreme Court's words, the California Supreme Court's words, virtually all the same legal benefits and privileges and legal obligations and duties that California law gives to and imposes upon a married couple. So the difference really was a difference of naming. And the court, as they saw it, they had to decide whether or not this and this is again using gay and lesbian advocates terminology and the court's own words, whether this separate but equal family law system was constitutional under the California Constitution. Now the court in its discussions rooted, ultimately they said it is unconstitutional, and they did so, their arguments depended on an understanding of human dignity. And I just thought I would quote this discussion because I think it's so important and intriguing. So the court said, one of the core elements of the right to establish an officially recognized family law that is embodied in the California constitutional right to marry is a couple's right to have their family relationship accorded dignity and respect equal to that accorded other officially recognized families. In assigning a different designation for the family relationship of same-sex couples while reserving the historic designation of marriage exclusively for opposite-sex couples poses at least a serious risk of denying the family relationship of same-sex couples such equal dignity and respect. Retaining the designation of marriage exclusively for opposite-sex couples and providing only a separate and distinct designation for same-sex couples may well have the effect of perpetuating a more general premise, now emphatically rejected by the state, that gay individuals and same-sex couples are in some respects second-class citizens who may, under the law, be treated differently from and less favorably than heterosexual individuals or opposite-sex couples. Now I think like a lot of other, this is just one portion of the California opinion, and I think in many ways this opinion was revolutionary, but I think this discussion, it is revolutionary, but as I've written, I think it's in an unfortunate way. We have unfortunate revolutions. And I think the court's discussion here ignores the internal diversity of queer communities in the United States when it speaks broadly and sweepingly of quote-unquote gay individuals and their apparently monolithic understandings of how dignity and citizenship are constructed. And I think that the court also ignores the diversity of family law orderings found outside of the US, which, contrary to the court's conclusions, do create separate but equal family law regimes, but do so in the spirit of actually advancing human dignity. And here I'm taking specifically a family law system that I'm familiar with from my law and religion work in India, namely personal law systems whereby members of different religions are governed by different family law regimes. So in the US now, we have a kind of, well, in some states at least, we have a kind of sexual personal law circulating in which there's different family law regimes for people of different sexual orientations as opposed to different religions, which is found throughout much of post-colonial or formerly British colonial societies. So in my writing, I've characterized this opinion as unempirical and that it has a certain resonance within legal academia. But I think we might also characterize it, to use more anthropological terminology, as ethnographic or even ethnophobic. By doing so, I want to suggest that anthropology, as a mode of inquiry and knowing, can intensely enhance current discussions about the legal regulation of same-sex intimacies. In other words, I think we need anthropology's vocabularies, methodologies, and epistemologies to humanize what is right now a mechanistic turn in the legal logic of human sexuality. So A is different than B, thus A must be less than B, or vice versa. And so that's the kind of legal logic, what I'm calling mechanistic legal logic, which is in fashion right now. So there's a lot more to say about all this, but let me just close by suggesting 3 questions which contributions to this journal might help elucidate and thus contribute to the ongoing legal discussions concerning same-sex intimacy. And these questions are by no means exhaustive, but they're just thoughts I have. So 1, what connections and disconnections or disconnects exist between communities organized around sexuality and those organized around faith? We call both, or some people